Good morning, everyone. It's 10 a.m. In London, British summertime. Welcome to our next episode of 42 Business Growth Principles. This is a podcast dedicated to those individuals that want to learn the 42 most critical business growth principles that are known. So, if you've watched any of the other podcasts or been part of the actual audio versions, you would realize by now that I talk about business growth principles as in certain truths around what this universe, what this world is about, and what makes up this universe. I have an analogy about the gravity, for instance, jumping off a building. 10 times out of 10, you are going to fall down to the ground. I mean, it's just it's indisputed, irrefutable laws that you need to abide by or apply or adhere to. And you have to acknowledge and you have to build those principles into your daily life. I mean, if you are going to walk on the top of a building and you slip, you're not just going to float, you're going to fall. And and you have to understand the skills around how to deal with the different circumstances. I talk about friction, um, where friction is both good for you and is useful, and then also overcoming friction is also useful. Friction, if we look at the brakes of a motor car, friction is incredibly useful in that it actually is an ability for us to slow the vehicle down by the brake pads, pushing onto the brake disc and slowing the vehicle down. But if you also look at, using the car analogy again, the wheel of a motor car spins on bearings which are lubricated, and it's the less the friction, the less fuel you use, the faster you can go, etc. So those are things that you can work with and you can work against, um, and it's like swimming upstream. You almost always going to have a tougher time swimming upstream than swimming downstream. And really, within marketing and business growth principles, you've got to be just swimming downstream. Just know what the business principles are, follow them, and work with them. And really, this is what this podcast is all about: is knowing what they are, becoming incredibly aware of them, and building them into everything that you do. So, out of the 42 business principles, this is episode 3. Episode 3, the first two we covered marketing being your ultimate leverage. The second principle was multiple channels of distribution. We are covered that specific topic. Today, the third of the 42 business principles is about positioning. Now, positioning is a if I had to take one key principle that almost everybody really gets challenged by and gets wrong, is that is of positioning. And the mentality, and you would have come across this in your careers and so on, and you may even have suffered from it. And that is this concept of the one-stop shop. Ever heard of that? The one-stop shop. In other words, we can do everything for everybody. Just come and ask us and we can do it. So that is probably the worst thing you could be doing. You need to be known for something. You got to stand out for something as opposed to stand for nothing. And we see this in things like politics. We see this in business specifically, and even in careers, in people's jobs and employment. You need to really be good and you need to be delivering. You need to be clearly communicating why you are different as opposed to all the other alternatives that people have. Now, if you just take a standard or a normal buying decision by anybody, they could do nothing. In other words, they can carry on with the status quo. They can just keep going the way they're going. They could do it themselves. In other words, they could go and find the knowledge, the tools, the people or whatever it is. They could bring it in house and do it themselves, or they could find someone to do it for them. Um, there is maybe a fourth option, which is find someone to do it with them. So that's a lot like let's call it a coach at a gym, where you get a trainer and you go to gym, I don't know, 3-4 times a week, and you have someone doing it with you, or going on with you on that journey. That's another type of positioning. But you're very, very clear that that gym instructor or whatever will be very, very clear. They might not do yoga, they might not do Pilates, they might not do cycling, they might not do weight training, but they might do high intensity fitness or something like that, or they might focus on different aspects. Now, if you have a specific need, you're not going to go to the person, the everything person, because we all know instinctively, if someone says they can do everything, we know they can potentially do nothing. We know that they're potentially desperate. And I think that's one of the biggest things that stands out for me, is when someone says, in terms of positioning, this is the third principle of the 42 business principles. If someone says they can do everything, it means they are desperate. They are desperate for work. They are willing to take on anything. They actually don't have a system or process to follow. And really, when you're looking at positioning, if you are very, very clear about who you are, what you stand for, but also, especially in business, if you are looking at understanding what that repeatable process is that delivers a predictable result, no matter what it is. I mean, it could be, if we take the Tesla motor car, I mean, or an Apple Mac, a MacBook Pro, for instance, or if you take go to Starbucks, go to McDonald's. I mean, I'm just naming brands just so that you can get a picture. They all stand for something. McDonald's doesn't say, come to us and we'll serve you anything you want to eat. They say, look, here is the menu. This is specifically how it works. You go there, you press this button, you make a payment, you collect your food, and you can sit in and eat, or you could leave. And they are known for quick, cheap meals. Tesla's known for electrical vehicles, and for almost being a drivable computer, if you like. If you think about Apple and the Mac, I mean, you're talking about an ecosystem that's got loads and loads of apps and things that you could bring in, and free operating system within the Apple space. I don't want to go into too much detail around the actual products, but if you think about anything that is your favorite brand, I mean, Red Bull, for instance, and so on. I mean, what makes them different? What makes them different to everybody else? And I think that's positioning. Understanding what you stand for is probably the most critical thing. However, the biggest challenge that most people face, and I would say this is probably why people get this wrong, is they don't understand who their customer is. I mean, in order to position yourself as an entity, in order to position yourself as different to everyone else, if you haven't identified your core target market and understand what they want, how they want it, and if you don't understand the core human needs that they have, because at the end of the day, it's human beings that buy, it's not companies or things that buy. It is human beings that make decisions, and human beings often make decisions emotionally first, and second, they make decisions, back up the decision through a sort of a functional, um, let's call it the right brain, logical sort of thinking. So, have you ever gone and bought something and thought, oh, that was pretty crazy, but you bought in the moment? And then later on, you try and justify why you bought it. That's really where the positioning comes in, is that marketing message that was put out there that attracted you, drew you in, got you to make the purchase. And then out of human nature, we then go logic. So in order to do positioning, you need to be able to understand what who your target customer is and the emotions that trigger them. There are certain things that, for instance, Amazon have got right. And I think it's Jeff Bezos that said, and don't quote me on this, but I think it goes something like, there are certain human needs that will never be different. So we're going to make sure that what we do at least adheres, at the very least, to those human needs. People want cheaper products, faster, and with the best possible quality. It's not going to change. In fact, we want things faster and faster and faster. In fact, if I just think about here in London, I do an Amazon Prime purchase, and if I can't get it the next day, I'm actually annoyed. But a few years back, to get it a week later in the post or whatever would be fine. To get it a month later would be fine. Um, but now, if I get it a month later, it's like, gee, do I really have to wait that long? I think I'm going to go somewhere else. So there's certain things that you have to understand about the target customer, who you're serving, and what really is important to them. Firstly, from an emotional point of view, and then secondly, is how can you provide sufficient information to justify their purchase or their engagement with you. When we're looking at professional services firms and firms that sell intangibles, so one of the segments I had earlier this morning was all about professional services firms. But if you think about a professional services firm, what's the sales pitch that you would hear from a salesperson selling a professional services contract? It would be something like, here is, I mean, we've got 25 years experience, we've got X number of customers that we've served here, all the logos. We have these qualifications. And, we've got this, we've done this, we've done that. It's us, me, 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 me. And they haven't connected with their target audience. Where professional services that get ahead and are further ahead of the curve are the ones that have built that positioning. So often, and it doesn't always say that it's better, but often a large firm, let's call it a listed entity, will choose or select a McKinsey's or a PwC or one of these large firms, not because they're better, but purely because of their positioning, their branding, if you like. If you choose one of these big firms, the likelihood of getting a reasonable outcome is quite good. When you're a small boutique firm, for instance, small boutique professional services firm, your credentials are so much more important. But do people really buy on that? And I think if you turn that around and start saying, how do I emotionally engage? How do I connect? What do you stand for as an entity? What makes you different as opposed to everyone else? And you can't say something like, oh, we small, therefore we agile, and we can adapt to any situation, and no matter what your needs are, we can do that work. I mean, everybody says that. I mean, is that truly a positioning? Is that truly a differentiation? I don't think so. I think you need to be thinking about, especially in professional services, especially in tangible, is to start saying, what is the framework that I offer? Why is my framework an alternative to what everybody else is doing? How do I position myself in the minds of the customer in such a way, or the client or the investor, in such a way that allows me to rise above everybody else? Very tough question. So positioning has got a lot to do with understanding the entire landscape. Okay, first thing to understand, and this is where most people get it wrong, have you really asked your customer or your target audience? Have you actually done market research? Have you picked up the telephone and spoken to a target potential customer and said, look, this is what I do. If I had to come to you with an offer, what is it that you'd like to see? What is it that would make me stand out compared to everything else that you hear? Because quite frankly, just like the attractive girl on the dance floor, if you like, the guys are going to be asking her. She's got many, many options, and if you take I mean, I suppose it sounds very sexist, but I think the bottom line is that the attractive person, the attractive client, investor, and so on, the person that you want to attract is going to have many, many suitors. Um, how are you standing out? How are you not the person sitting in the corridor with your briefcase in a queue of other sales reps, if you like? Why aren't you in the boardroom with the decision makers and helping them work out a strategic plan in terms of what you can do to help them achieve their goals? And so understanding your customer, doing the proper head, heart, and home analysis of your client is critical to understanding how you can position yourself differently, is to really do that market research, to understand your customer, and to continuously be asking those questions, to be looking for the reviews, to ask, how did you get to hear about us? All the way through to, what was your experience like? Would you choose us again? Is there something we can do, improve? Who else has been knocking on your door? What are they saying compared to what we are saying? Is what they are saying more appealing to you compared to what I'm saying, etc.? Must understand your target market. The second element is understand your competitors. Look at what they are doing. Um, don't copy your competitors. There's another thing that I see often out in the marketplace is I I have a professional service firm. I don't know what to say. Let me go and Google what what my competitors are doing, people in my space, and that looks pretty good. Copy paste, put my own branding logo in, and then I look like everybody else. But got to be different. So you got to say, okay, if I look at my competitors, what are they saying they can do? What can I do different? What can I do special or unique that is so unique, so special, that I'm so top of the mind of my potential customer or investor or anything like that? Anybody I'm trying to engage with, even employees. Many people don't realize that marketing and business growth principles is about attracting the right people to your company. Is your marketing message to your employees the same? Are you positioning yourself as the key or the better employer? Because guess what? Employees are doing multiple interviews. Employees are getting approached by your competitors, by other companies. You are in competition to other companies. What makes you different as an employer? What makes you different as a target for the best suppliers? I mean, you would have seen this before, where you have certain suppliers will latch onto certain key customers for them or clients for them, and you might be one of them, where they give you that extra help. They give you additional resources that they might even add to your marketing budget. They might even add materials. They might even provide additional resources. They might even invite you to different events and things that will further enhance your credibility. There might be awards and things like that you can get, which raises you up. So, which makes you different to your competitors, because you might be selling the same thing. So, number one, know your customer. Number two, know your competitors. Know how you could be different. Know how you could step out of this um, space where you're trying to be like everyone else. Now there is a bit of a map that we could draw, and that's really what I'm trying to share with you today, is to say, how do you take this, um, how do you take this particular uh, challenge of positioning yourself and put into some sort of practical terms. Um, and the easiest way to do that is to do your standard sort of segment. So you got from left to right, from top to bottom. So you got two lines. So on the horizontal, you can have um, less and more of. So less of, more of. At the top, again, you could have more of, less of. And you might then say, okay, how am I different? So what can I provide more of, and what can I provide less of to compare myself to my competitors? So let me give you an example. Software is maybe a really good one to use as an analogy. Let's say I'm really good at developing software, and I can develop any software that you like. But when I look at the market and I say, I want to do a product market fit, and I want to position myself in such a way that I focus on a particular niche. Okay. So if I go out to market and I say, all right, I would like to create a software that serves professional services businesses. And I would like to create one that makes their lives easier. So how would I do that? What would they need more of? What would they need less of? And I could start drawing a continuum. So what would they need more of? They would probably need more simplicity. They would probably need less complexity, but they might need more support in terms of onboarding and training and that sort of thing, but they need um, less in terms of cost. So I can start mapping out where and how I'm going to position myself. Then I look at all the competitors. Where do they sit? Some competitors will be having more expensive software with a much higher price, but their functionality that they provide is incredible. I mean, they could that some of those software that's a competitor might be so broad and deep and rich that it's worth the extra cost, the extra effort. On the flip side is could have certain customers that are saying, look, I need the very simplest, most basic key things, these 3, 4, 5 things that I need that must just work without me even thinking about it. And I just want to switch it on. It's like downloading an app from the App Store, switch it on, do my login, boom, and I'm working. That is a sort of a continuum that you could start looking at and say, okay, where does it fit? And so my challenge to you this coming week would be to think, how would I map out what I do on a horizontal and on a vertical line, and then see where I would like to fit less of, more of, and so on. And the goal then would be to say, what do I stand for? What market do I want to do? And then go and do the market research and see how big that segment is. Because you might say, I want to work with lawyers in this specific geography, in that focus on, let's call it criminal law, that have between 5 and 20 employees, and so on. Those are all the sort of the demographic side of things. On the psychographic, the psychological side of things, what do I need more of or less of? Do they want more work? Do they want to reduce their burdens? Do they want to be able to collect invoices quicker? Do they want to be able to invoice rapidly, for instance, if I'm doing invoicing software? Do they want to keep track billable hours, or don't they? I mean, what is important to them? So, I mean, as example, in terms of from a software point of view. But if you go and have a look and you start mapping out what do they need more of, what do they need less of, what do they need more of, what do they need less of, and see where you can fit the best that you can fit. Remember, you also got to take stock of who you are and what your skill sets are, because there will be places where you are really, really strong, that you're passionate about, and you could do all day, every day without thinking. And then these other parts that are, you can do it, you don't quite like it, and you probably won't be able to sustain it. Rather, understand what those are and leave those one side, but focus on the things that you love, you're passionate about, and you can do it without thinking. And it's your zone, if you like. Sit there and then understand, okay, who's my target market? Who are my competitors? What can I do more of? What can I do less of? And then understand how you position yourself as compared to everybody else. And remember, the positioning is a final thought before we wrap up today. And that is, we're talking about positioning not in terms of an academic sense. We are talking about the position in the mind of the customer or your investor or your client. What position do you take? If I say to you, let's take the example of, let's say that if if you look at the two, the Gillette and the Dollar Shave Club, as an example, in the mind of the customer, for me, it's much easier, and really, I'm not sure about so much about just receiving a raise. I'm not sure if I'm going to get too many, too few. It's just too complicated for me. Whenever I need one, I'll just go and buy one. So Gillette is like probably okay for me. For someone else, in their minds, they might say, look, I can't be bothered to go and buy when I need it, because I'm just going to run out. I just want it delivered every month, and I want my shaving cream and my razor delivered, and I'll pay one amount and boom, it's done, and I don't even have to think about it. It depends in the mind of the customer what's the most important. And I think that's really the end of the episode, and I think that's the crux of what we try to get across today. What is that positioning? There's a lot of material out there about positioning. If you want to talk about how to position your company better, your message, your specific line of business, especially in the professional services environment or any environment really, please use me as a sounding board. Drop me a mail, put comments in the chat box, etc., and let's have a brainstorm about it, and let's see if we can help you. Have a super weekend. For those of you that are in the UK and up in the Northern Hemisphere, there's certain places experiencing storms and bad weather, others extreme heat and so on. At least have a super weekend. Stay safe, and we'll see you next Friday. Thank you so much.